Welcome to Glowing Success. My name is Heidi and I am your host. This podcast is for beauty entrepreneurs. Join me weekly as we dive into the beauty industry's ins and outs, from business strategies, top-selling services, and taboo topics. I will be interviewing industry leaders with empowering stories and game-changing insights. Let's illuminate your path to success together. Let's jump into this next episode. I'm so excited for the interview today. I will be interviewing Alice Berman. She owns MSP Microblading Collective, and we are going to be talking about everything permanent makeup, you guys. So if you're interested in adding this service or interested in going into permanent makeup, this is the episode for you. Without further ado, here goes my interview with her. Today, I have Alice Berman with me. I'm so excited. We are going to talk everything about permanent makeup, you guys. Well, welcome, Alice.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yay! Well, Alice, I know you through beauty school. I've known you for quite some time. I've obviously followed you a little bit on social media as well. And it's been so exciting to see how your career has taken off and how you've really taken permanent makeup to a whole nother level in the Twin Cities here. But for our listeners, because they don't know you, maybe can you give us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks. And also super fun to reconnect as,
Yeah.
you mentioned being at Aveda with you and then all these years later
Yeah.
getting to do this, which is super fun. So I'm the owner of MSP Microblading Collective, and I started this company about 7 years ago. It was just me when I started, and I was renting out of a friend of mine's tattoo shop, and he had a little room in the back that they were using as an office. And when I first started doing this, he said that if I do it, though he didn't know a lot about it, that I should come work at his shop. And I held him I held him to it. And I was like, okay, I'm really coming. He said, okay.
That's
And
awesome.
so I started working out of a shop called Black End, and it's in South Minneapolis. And they're still there, and they're still great.
Yep. That's right by my house.
Yeah. It's right next to a coffee shop there. So I started there in 2017. And at that time, there weren't a ton of people doing permanent makeup. Well, there were people doing permanent makeup, but there weren't a ton of people doing microblading specifically at the time.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so there was like 5 people.
I
Now
know.
it's like 500.
Yeah.
And so things were super busy for me just as soon as I started. And I worked out of that tattoo shop for a couple years, and then felt because it was just exploding so much that it was time for me to grow. So I left there, and then I opened a shop with the friend of mine, Pookie,
Yep.
that told me I should work there. And we opened a shop off Lyndale in South Minneapolis. And we're not business partners, but we're like roommates. So one side of the shop there has the traditional tattoo, and that's his side, and it's called Peregrine Tattoo.
Nice.
And then the other side of the wall is mine, and I have space for 3 other artists there as well, besides me. So that is where we are right now. And then I opened a second shop right during the pandemic, and that one's in St. Louis Park.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, she is opening another shop. I was like, well, business must be great.
It was really busy for me, even though it seemed counterintuitive of what the rest of the world was doing. I just felt it made sense for what was happening to me. So, yeah, it was crazy.
I feel like sometimes in business, you kind of have to make those decisions sometimes, even though people might not feel like it's right around you, or like you said, even, the scope of what's going on in society and maybe, you know, anything going on. But, you know, you have to trust your gut. And I'm sure that's what you did in that instance is like, I'm trusting my gut that this is a good decision, that I think, you know, people are wanting a space that I can offer. And I think that's something that maybe we can kind of dive into too, is like, you know, in the Twin Cities for a long time, like you were mentioning earlier, there just wasn't a lot of newer permanent makeup artists. So a lot of the permanent makeup artists that were in town had been around for a long time, and they weren't necessarily
Yeah.
offering those microblading services and maybe like the blade and shade services, the newer techniques that were coming out. So I think, you know, you opening something in the Twin Cities where newer artists can maybe call home, that not, you know, don't necessarily fit into the tattoo shop environment, but also maybe don't really fit into the spa environment. They need something to call their own home. And I think that was really, I don't know, from the outside looking into your business, that's kind of how I saw it and was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm glad that people can feel that they can, you know, find a place that, you know, other people are doing something similar to them.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that was definitely the goal for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see it. I see it, the drive. Now, so if somebody's listening today and they are like, you know, I've always been wanting to get into permanent makeup. I'm very curious about it. You know, and I will preface too with you guys, I also have some experience with permanent makeup, and mostly I only did microblading. So I didn't go back for any blade and shade. I didn't go back for any like of the tattoo stuff. I just trained in microblading. So I know a little bit
Mhm.
about this as well, but I don't offer it anymore. And so I'm not in that world as much, but I will say, like, looking into the world of permanent makeup, since it has kind of blown up and gotten very popular, and now there's programs in the Twin Cities, there's apprenticeships in the Twin Cities, and so forth. You know, what would be your biggest advice to somebody that is looking to get into permanent makeup?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question.
I
I
know.
think there's yeah, no, it's good though. Okay, so a couple things come to mind right away, and I think the first one can apply to anyone in the beauty industry or even in other industries too, is just reminding yourself that the first couple years you do anything, whether it's hair, nails, skin, permanent makeup, it's a hustle. Like
Hmm.
you have to network and friends and family and put yourself out there in social media and go so hard for a couple years. And you don't ever really get to stop even once those couple years are over.
I agree.
But those first couple years are not for the faint of heart. So I just always recommend really stick with it if you want it.
Yep.
Um, and know that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And there's going to be times that you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this. This person's, you know, mad at me, or you feel like the world is against you, but they're not. I mean, it's 95% happy, but there's always a couple people that can make it
Yep.
difficult.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, just knowing it's not easy. I think a lot of people see other people's profiles online
Yeah.
and they think, oh, they just showed up and they're so good and they have all these followers and they're so busy. It's not like that.
Nope.
Yeah, takes
Nope.
a long time. So it's not to say don't do it. It's just to say having a realistic mindset and being willing to work really, really, really hard when you
Yeah.
start.
Yeah. And learn as
Yeah.
much as possible, right? Like for me, I was
Oh, yeah.
thinking every permanent makeup artist that I've been around is just a slight difference, right? Like there's just a
Hmm.
little bit of, you know, and I think that's true for anybody in the service industry. We're all unique in our own ways, and we all have, you know, things that we offer that maybe are a little different than the person next to you doing the same service. So I think that's kind of unique too, is like maybe try to learn from other artists that you're interested in and that
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. Like, I think the advice you just gave is golden, because I tell this to people all the time that like being a business owner is such a hard job, but it's so
A
rewarding,
lot. Yes,
right? Like,
definitely.
and you have to be passionate about what you do. So, like, I will say, if you're looking to get into permanent makeup and you've been thinking about it for a while, I would say try it, get into it, dive into it, and really explore that passion, because you're never going to know if your passions are really, alive and doing things in your life unless you try them. And I think,
Yeah.
like, just from anybody that I've been around that's other business owners, we all just kind of want to drive it in that there's going to be hard days, there's going to be really amazing days, there's going to be difficult clients, there's going to be amazing client. Like, you have to take the good with the bad and vice versa, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
it's just part of growing a business. But growing and actually sustaining a business, it's just, it's like she said, it's just not for the faint of heart. So keep on going, people, keep on going. So
Yeah.
the other question I have for you, so obviously that's for people who are trying to get in permanent makeup. So maybe the other question I have for you too is, like, I see there's so many trends online. Like, there's so many brow trends, there's so many eyeliner trends, there's so many lip blushing trends. Like, and for anybody, so I have clients that'll ask me about permanent makeup all the time, and I obviously send them to you, and
You're
I tell
so
them,
sweet. Thank you.
yeah, well, I always try to send people to people that I trust and people that I know will take care of them and so forth. But how do you navigate? I know that there's a consultation process and I know that there's all those things, but how do you navigate the questions of specifically, let's say, brows? Like, there's nano technique, there's blade and shade, there's microblading, there's just shading, there's all different types of techniques. And obviously, like, some are geared for maybe certain skin types, some are geared for how you want to look every day. But what does that process look for you, for the client perspective as well? Because I think that's something that might intimidate somebody getting into the beauty industry or getting into the permanent makeup industry, I should say, because, you know, and dealing with clients' expectations. Like, so maybe how do
Yeah.
you navigate that?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So what I do is when a client comes in, we have a consultation together in front of the mirror, and I like to ask them what their goals are in doing the service. And based on what they tell me, or a lot of times clients will come in with pictures of either brows they like on someone else or how they like their own brows on a daily basis with makeup, etc. And I'll listen to that, kind of take into account how much natural brow they have, what their skin looks like, what their goals are. And then based on how each technique I know performs over time, I'll make a recommendation based on what their goals are for the most part and what they look like. So if someone's skin looks like it can hold microblading and they don't want a super filled in, like they want the most natural, lightest brow, then we might go with that. If someone wants a darker, more filled in look, I usually just try to steer them right away towards a powder brow because I know that's what they're going to come back wanting. Um,
Yep.
and then, yeah, and then there's nano, there's all these different techniques. And I think some go through trends, some are kind of like the tried and true. I find that most people like the idea of microblading, but in daily use, a lot of women want that look where it's more filled in.
Yeah. And
They,
defined.
yeah, they come back and they say, I like the microblading, but I still put powder over it. And I think, okay, well then you want a powder brow. But we don't know that until we talk about it or do the first session, and then they have a chance to see what it looks like healed. And then sometimes the second session, the consultation is almost more important than the first time we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because seeing how they heal,
Yeah,
right, is huge.
yeah.
Like, and everybody heals maybe just a little bit different,
Oh, for
and
sure. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's great to hear. So if you're listening and you're like, man, that's one of the things that kind of scares me about getting into permanent makeup is just making that decision with your client, alongside your client, and having that choice be permanent.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
we are working with a tattoo on your face, essentially. So if that scares you guys, just know that there's a process to it. And I will say, like, that process you're going to walk through with your client, and you'll have enough education or background, maybe even through peers, through your own education, through your own experience, of knowing how each technique kind of settles and how it actually, like, performs in the skin, like she was saying. So that's good to hear. I love that
Yeah.
process because it definitely makes all parties feel
Yeah.
welcome, in that process. Because I will say, like, even for my own brows, I have my brows microbladed, and actually, I'm very surprised of how long it's lasted because I have not gotten a touch up, and I got them done in 2016.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
know. So if I do see you soon, like you'll see my brows. I mean, my lines are kind of blowed out a little bit, which makes sense because I've had it for so long. But I'm very surprised I still have my lines. I'm very surprised it hasn't totally faded into nothing. And so I'm kind of like, wow, some people really do hold on to their stuff for a very long time. I will say I'm due
Yeah.
for a totally different technique, like kind of how you were saying earlier, like there's some tried and trues. I think like the blade and shade's always intriguing to me because, I see a lot of people do the microblading kind of in the front of the brow. So it kind of gives that more natural look and it gives that little bit
Yep.
of space in that front. And then how you were saying, a lot of people like kind of like the end or their tail of their brow kind of filled in. And so that's where like the shading comes in. And I love that look on so many people because I do think it lasts and it just looks more done, like you did your makeup,
Yeah. And
essentially.
yeah, you're so right. And it's the best of both worlds. So I think that
Right.
one's really popular for sure.
Yeah. The other one that I feel like I've been kind of interested in and I just seem to catch my eye a lot is the nano technique where they just basically do kind of the same strokes as microblading. And you can correct me if I'm wrong with this because like I said, I'm not doing it anymore. So I'm just kind of looking from the outside in. But from what I understand about the nano technique is basically it takes, you're taking the tattoo gun and you're making those lines how you would normally make them with microblading, but with the tattoo gun. Am I
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Yep. You use like a single tiny diameter needle
Oh, nice.
and you're basically tracing in the hair strokes with that.
Nice. I think
Yeah.
that might be a good technique on me too, because I tend to have more oily skin. And I feel like with clients that have more oily skin, more of the permanent techniques or the tattoo gun techniques tend to last a little bit longer.
Yeah, they definitely can.
Now, we've been talking about brows. Let's touch base a little bit on other services. So, obviously, like your MSP Microblading Collective, but I do see that artists and maybe yourself offer other services. So, like eyeliner and lip blushing. Maybe touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So each artist at the collective has they're all independent uh, businesses essentially
Awesome.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone makes their own decisions about what they want to offer and their schedule and their pricing. Um, so I personally offer also lip blush and the lash line enhancement.
Love it.
And there are a few other artists offering that. I also have an artist named Dana, and she is offering freckles.
Cool.
And yeah, they're so cute. And then she also just started scar camouflage.
Nice. I've heard a lot about that as well. So, stretch marks, things like that. What do you mean?
Yeah,
Okay. Or
it,
just
it
obviously normal scars too.
totally. Yeah, it's very cool. She just tries to match the skin tone around the scar. And so it really makes the scar less noticeable. And it's a couple sessions as well, but so far, and she's just getting started, but so far it's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
really cool.
And that can be a little bit challenging because, scar tissue is a little thicker, so it's not
Uh-huh.
necessarily going to hold the same as maybe fresh skin that hasn't been scarred over. So that kudos to her because that's
Right.
probably a hard
Yeah.
one to get into. And what about anybody who's maybe had like breast augmentations, things like that, like areola? I've seen that that's become very popular too in the last couple years of more people learning that technique and so forth.
Yeah, I think Dana's going to offer that as well in the future. The thing that's a little bit tricky, if I'm just being honest about offering that, not so much the art of it or doing it, is just that it's such a small population and it's such a niche service needed that a lot of women, and I can, excuse me, speak to this because my mom and my aunt are both breast cancer survivors and they had double mastectomies. And when it came time to get their nipples tattooed, I said, "Oh, you should go to my friend Pookie," at the time. And I was trying to get them to go to him, which
Yeah.
was awkward for everybody.
Yeah.
But she
I
was like,
love it.
"Oh, I don't think so. Um,
So it's an emotional journey.
it is, but she
Yeah.
just went to her plastic surgeon also performed the areola tattooing, which I didn't
Oh,
know was
that's
a thing, but
interesting.
that's really common.
Okay.
Um, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but
No.
he's not like an
Yeah.
artist that
Right.
does that for a living,
So it's not
just
going to look the
that.
most realistic. But
No, it's just a pink circle, but it's what
it's
she did.
yeah. Well, and it's also,
Yep.
sometimes if she's happy with it, that's really what matters, right?
Right. Yeah,
But
and she is. She does it. Yeah.
that's also maybe something that, if you're listening and want to get into that, you probably could work for a plastic surgeon. That might be something that might be an avenue of opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
especially if that's what they do mostly is, breast augmentations and things like that, because maybe they're looking for an artist that really does specialize in that. And
Yeah.
that, like she said, it's a very heavy niche. So, you are very narrowed down, I should say. And so, your expansion of services might have to be just a few other ones, um,
Right. Yep.
but it's so interesting how permanent makeup has such far, you can do so many things with it. And I think that's really unique. Eyeliner, I love that. I've been seeing a lot of people do more of the lash enhancements recently rather than the actual, like what we know as eyeliner. And I think
Yep.
that's really cool because it really kind of shuffles in the color between kind of maybe like really close to the lashes or throughout the lash line. And you can correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong with this too, but and
Yeah.
it looks a
No,
lot
you're
more
right.
natural and it looks a lot more like shadowed in. And
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that's become so cool, and I think that technique is great. Lip blushing, I love that. I personally have my lips blushed, and I will say, like,
Nice.
it definitely
Yeah.
helps define them. And for me, I have kind of a smaller upper lip, and I have done Botox in my upper lip as a lip flip, but it really helped me also just define that upper lip if I didn't want to put fillers in there. And I'm just kind of wanting to add some color because I don't have a heavy, I don't have a very defined color line. And it was really fun. It was fun process to see it and get it done and kind of have it now. And that's probably another thing I need to get touched up soon too. But
Yeah.
my microblading of my brows I did years ago when I was training in New York, and then my lip blushing I actually got done from a girl that worked with me here in my spa, but now she
Okay.
lives in Boston. So
Cool.
I have to
Okay.
decide, should I make a trip out to Boston or should I find somebody here? So eventually I have to find out. But so man, we have
Yeah.
touched on so many topics, but I love it. So you have expanded, you started in a tattoo shop and expanded from there. You have learned different techniques. Obviously, like the one thing I really kind of want to touch on too is so when I first got into permanent makeup, it just really wasn't like you were saying earlier, it wasn't very popular in the Twin Cities. There just wasn't a
Yeah.
lot of it yet. Even training back in those days wasn't in the Twin Cities yet. And for me, I had a really hard time after I trained in New York and when I came back to find an apprenticeship. So, like in the
Yeah.
state of Minnesota, where we are, to be a tattoo artist, you have to complete 200 hours of apprenticeship. I believe that's still standard. Um,
Yep.
and man, it was so tough because when I would go to all these tattoo artists, so I didn't have tattoo artist friends like you did. So I will say, like, I went to all these tattoo artists and they would just
Yeah.
laugh at me because they're like, wait, first of all, what is this? And then,
Right.
like I was
Yeah.
saying too, like a lot of the other permanent makeup artists that I was reaching out to in town, they had been in business for like over 10 years. They have established themselves. It was a long time since they had done anything that in the realm of apprenticeship or like education wise. So they were all kind of looking at me funny too. And so
Mhm.
it was quite a journey for me. I actually it took me a year to find an apprenticeship.
Oh
now,
my
now, mind
gosh.
you, I was a
Yeah.
working esthetician at that time too. So this wasn't the only service I offered. So maybe I could have been a little bit more advantageous with that. But it did take me a year, and I actually did end up getting an apprenticeship with another permanent makeup artist. And I was, I think, her second apprentice at that time. So she had just started
Wow.
doing this and kind of just started the apprenticeship journey. It is a little bit more taxing for artists to take on apprentices because back in those days, and I think they have changed this recently, the tattoo artist, if you were going to apprentice somebody, you could not take any other clients during the time that you were apprenticing. So that was the only thing she could do is just watch me do my work. And so
Mm,
it's pretty expensive, right? Like, you're
for
essentially
sure.
taking work away from them just to do your apprenticeship. So on top of it being difficult for me to find an apprenticeship, it was also pretty expensive. So that journey was interesting for me, but maybe touch on like how that's changed in the Twin Cities. I know that there's actual schools now and there's obviously apprenticeship programs that are easier to
Yeah.
find.
Yeah. So there, as you know, I think that they changed that rule about you can't take a client during, because when I have apprentices, I mean, the first few people they do, obviously, I'm not taking my own client. I'm sitting by their side and watching everything. But as the apprentice gets more comfortable, then I'm sitting right near them, but I'm working on someone. I just keep getting up and checking on them and helping them is essentially how I've managed it. Um, but there are schools now where it's just dedicated to having apprentices and they hire teachers or instructors to walk around and help. Um, what else is different? I think they had a rule that the person who is your supervisor had to be licensed for 2 years before
Right.
they could take apprentices.
Yep.
And I think that still stands.
Yeah, I think it
Um,
does too. I could be wrong with that one, but I don't think they changed that one. I do. Yeah, I agree with you. I
yeah.
think they kept that the same, which actually I really appreciate because
Oh,
if
for
you're an
sure.
apprentice with
Yeah.
somebody, like hopefully they're, you know, have been in the
Hmm.
industry for just a little bit of time to show you that they
Yeah.
have a little bit of that experience as well. So, needless to say, it doesn't matter what state you are. If you're listening to in and you're from a different state than Minnesota, what we're basically trying to say too is like permanent makeup has really come a long way, and so a lot of states and a lot of areas have taken it on, and a lot of places have really advanced with the training and apprenticeship. So it probably will be a lot easier for you to get into in your area than it was previously.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that's amazing because there has been a lot of people interested in it. And it's really crazy because you can really take off with it as a whole career. It doesn't have to be an assistance too, you know. And I think that's kind of cool. The other thing I've seen that I've been kind of interested in is scalp stuff. So like maybe
Yes.
looking like people have hair,
Yeah.
and or a hairline. And I think that's kind of cool too. But
I've been looking at that myself. I've been debating learning that. There's a place in Canada I would love to go train called Ink Barber. If you're on Instagram, their work's amazing. Um, but the thing holding me back is I'm just not sure in Minnesota specifically how many men,
are
I mean, it's
interested.
for women too, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see a lot of it with men also as a big part of the clientele.
Yep.
Um, are willing to kind of to do that yet. Like
Yeah.
whenever I bring it up to friends who are like, they'll make a joke, guy friends, they'll say, "Well, I'm losing my hair. Can you give me back my hair?" And I say, "Yeah, actually I can." And they're like, "Oh, just kidding." And I'm like, "Oh no, like let me do it."
A scalp tattoo
Um,
sounds so much fun. No,
I know,
I
doesn't it?
mean, it's funny because I now having two tattoos on my face, technically, like, it's not as bad as it sounds, people.
It's really not.
We
It's
have
really
numbing
not.
cream. We got, we can
Yeah,
take breaks and
it's easy.
yeah. But I get what you're saying. We really want to watch your market. And I will say, like, that's so it's so important when you're thinking about going into an industry or even starting a business in industry is really looking at the market around you and looking at what people are excited about or purchasing or what's becoming popular. Not saying that you can't start something and start that trend and start
True.
really
Yeah.
becoming popular, because I think essentially you did that a little bit when you opened up your location. Even your second location, you invited artists to have a home. So I will say it's kind of similar to that. Whereas if somebody started doing something in an area that really a lot of people haven't done it in that area, it's not saying it can't thrive, but sometimes you
Yeah.
have to be a little bit more cautious when you're making those decisions because it's not going to be your main source of income. It's going to be
Yeah.
something you have to build up. So that's smart to, always look at the trends and always look at what's kind of happening in your area.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
So,
sure.
listeners, I hope you have so much information about permanent makeup, about the different types of permanent makeup, and maybe some listening to another person's journey in the permanent makeup world is kind of fun because everybody starts their career differently. But I will say, like, it's always going to feel like kind of a leap in the pool. But once you get into it,
Mm.
it's so worth it, and your passion will keep on driving you forward. Alice, thank you for having this chat with me today. For any of the listeners that are interested in contacting you, following you, maybe apprenticing with you, maybe even renting from you, where can they find you?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi. It's been super fun. Yeah, you can find my website online. It's just mspmicroblading.com. And I'm also on Instagram. There's an MSP Microblading Collective Instagram account. And then Alice at, no, how does it? Alice MSP
Yeah.
Microblading, I
Yep.
believe is my handle.
Yep.
If you type those words in, it should come up. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and email or follow me online. And yeah, and I'm pretty dialed in with all of it. So I get
Yeah.
back to people pretty quickly if
Yes.
anyone has questions.
Yeah. And anybody that's interested in the Twin Cities, do you have any current openings in either of your shop for people to rent?
I do for a few months at St. Louis Park. I actually have a move coming up. So at
Okay.
the end of April, yeah, and I haven't really announced this publicly yet, but it's
Oh,
not, it's okay because it's not, it's going to happen soon. So
okay. Yeah.
at the end of April, we're going to be going back down to just one shop again at
Cool.
my Minneapolis location.
Nice.
It's just been a lot juggling too, so I
Yes.
think it's going to be more fun to all be together and to all be
Yes.
around Pookie and the other tattoo artists too. So that's
Yeah.
the idea.
That
Yeah.
sounds way more fun. And honestly, like
Mhm.
artists, especially in the tattoo kind of world or even the permanent makeup world, I feel like people thrive off each other. So I will say, like, that vibe of having other artists around you, I think and more artists around you, I should say, is cool. But congratulations
Yeah.
on that decision, because those
Well,
decisions are hard to make as business
yeah.
owners. So,
Yeah. No, I feel really good about it. I'm
oh, good.
excited actually to all be together in
Yay.
Minneapolis. So yeah,
Well,
thanks.
thanks again, Alice.
Thank you. This
Yay.
was super fun, and I hope that I was informative.
You
And
were.
hopefully,
Thank you.
yeah.
I hope you liked that episode and found something useful or a tip that you can use immediately. If you are wanting more marketing tips, business tips, or anything like that, I have a lot of resources on my website. So I have PDFs that you can download for free. So look in your show notes. There should be a link in the show notes that you can click on, and it'll take you right to my coaching website. And thanks for listening.